In the November 5th speech from the throne, as the Acting Minister of Public Works, I would like to provide an update on last year's initiatives and highlight the critical status of the Tynes Bay Waste-to-Energy Facility and what this government is doing to address it. In the November 2020 speech from the throne, the Ministry of Public Works' focus was on three initiatives: introducing legislation to grant leasehold interest in the St. George's Club to the St. Regis Hotel developers, constructing a marina in the town of St. George's, and advance legislation to bring about municipal reform for the Corporation of Hamilton and St. George's. I am pleased to advise that a solution has been found to advance the marina project for St. George's, which will see the Corporation of St. George's benefit from a leasehold arrangement and the rental income and revenue that will come. In a ministerial statement to the House of Assembly on Friday, I will provide additional details, including a timeline for the start of work on the marina, as well as a projected date for completion. The public will be aware that matter relating to the Municipalities Act is before the courts. As a result, I cannot comment further at this time. Friday's speech from the throne raised the issue of Bermuda's waste management being an infrastructure crisis that we must devote all efforts to resolving. Located on Palmetto Road in Devonshire, Tynes Bay Waste-to-Energy Facility is a mass-burning waste-to-energy plant that combusts refuse and produces high-pressure system for power production. It generates approximately 125,000 kilowatts per day. Most of that power is sold back to Balco through the power grid. Still, a third of it is utilized internally to power the plant and the Tynes Bay seawater reverse osmosis plant next door, which produces some 750,000 gallons of fresh water per day from renewable energy. But we are at a critical stage. The public will recall that the plant now is over 25 years old and has undergone major refurbishment. In 2009, elements of the waste burning units within the plant had reached their useful life cycle, resulting in the plant experiencing frequent breakdowns and an excessive accumulation of solid waste. In 2010, 2011, $22 million was spent on plant upgrades to ensure the island's solid waste disposal program continued to meet the island's needs. While the facility upgrades were a significant investment, they were estimated to last only 10 years. With this in mind, in June 2012, Tynes Bay management decided to move forward towards creating a new foundation for Bermuda by seeking budgetary estimates from reputable contractors in the waste-to-energy field for the design, supply, delivery, construction, and commissioning of a complete third unit. This third unit would ensure that the engineers could upgrade one of the existing units through proper future planning. The budgetary estimate provided at that time was $95 million. The priority of addressing the issue with Tynes Bay took a distant second to the America's Cup under the previous administration. And as a result, the focus on the critical status of the plan was redirected towards supporting that sporting event. In the interim, the engineers kept the plant going without the benefit of the necessary support and funding. In 2018, the plant's management conducted a feasibility study to provide Cabinet with a better understanding of the risk and life cycle of the plant systems. Results of this data-driven study indicated that over 30 million in critical systems would fail between 2019 and 2022 and require replacement. These systems include the same boiler unit elements upgraded in 2010 and 2011, obsolete electrical switchgear and protection systems, the central crane units, and essential pumps. The very same systems that should have formed part of the plan and continued upgrade in fiscal year 2013 and 2014. I can advise the public that as it stands now, the plant has experienced failure of a critical 27-year-old pump, loss of a transformer unit, monthly failures of both boiler unit, economized tubes, and quarterly failure of superheater tubes. Ongoing maintenance costs continues to increase. The primary maintenance costs stem from the months spent on boiler leak repairs, which continues to increase. In 2018 and 2019, the average spend was $22,000 per year. In 2020, it increased almost fivefold to $94,000. These are 1 or 2 repairs every year. However, in stark contrast to the previous 3 years, as of 31st of October 2021, there have been 8 boiler leak repairs. The November repair estimate is $110,000, and December remains unknown. Presently, the total repair estimate for 2021 is over $536,000, and once again, more than a fivefold increase on the previous year. It is essential to note that these costs do not account for the revenue loss when the units are not producing electricity, estimated at $20,000 per day. As previously stated, Tynes Bay is over 25 years old, and with that age come the same recurring issues. For example, the unit number 1 boiler underwent repairs this past September and October, yet developed another leak on Saturday. And unit number 2, which was running for 5 weeks, and the longest it has run in 6 months, developed a leak on Sunday past. Both the units will need to come offline to prevent further damage, but we must balance our need to manage the island's garbage with how we affect repairs. 2 teams of welders will be deployed from Germany to address the leaks, and both boilers will be shut down. It is clear that Bermuda is in dire and desperate need of a new facility. But this government has some solutions. The ministry's immediate strategy is to work towards ensuring the system remains operational. As we move into 2022, the plan is to invest an additional $7.5 million into stabilizing the plant. The solution is short-term and is estimated to last for 3 to 4 years. This will provide the ministry, working with other stakeholders, the time to develop the business case necessary to support the funding proposal. For such a major capital development, source the best model for the replacement plan and can conduct the appropriate change in operations to provide seamless waste disposal for the people of Bermuda. The choice is simple, everyone. We can either invest $150 million to make significant upgrades to the plant, or resort to dumping garbage in our landfill. The latter is a steep backwards, and I know that it cannot be allowed to become our fate. In his post-throne speech press conference, the leader of opposition said, "Why now? When we could be using the funds to support the economy, social programs, and education?" The answer is quite simple. Firstly, Tynes Bay has gone beyond its life cycle and is about to give up. If we do not take the necessary steps, now we will have no other choice but to build up trash around the island. This is not the quality of life or environment impact this government wants. Despite the significant challenges with this project, I am pleased to advise that the plant is already on the path to refurbishment. The government created a cross-ministry team to accelerate the replacement of critical assets and components within the facility in the short term, with the ultimate goal of a fully refurbished and repurposed facility within the next 3 to 4 years, and finding creative funding solutions. We envision long-term funding from the combined Tynes Bay and wastewater infrastructure currently on the way, forming part of a new waste and water utility. This project will see the Tynes Bay waste-to-energy facility repurposed as a central energy hub for the wastewater infrastructure, forming a combined waste and water recovery utility that will attract investment partners. Essentially, this new facility will produce fresh water from garbage and sewage using the Tynes Bay plant to power water production and sewage treatment processes within the same facility. I'm confident that this new combined utility will capitalize on the natural synergies between waste to energy, water production, and provide a sustainable and resilient means of water production and waste disposal for this island. Thank you, and I'll now turn over to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Minister Furbert. Good afternoon. As I begin my remarks today, I once again wish to acknowledge the contributions of our frontline workers to the protection and support of our community in the face of this unrelenting pandemic. My remarks today are aimed at providing some brief context on certain initiatives highlighted in last week's throne speech that directly involve the Ministry of Finance. In a ministerial statement on the 10th of September, I provided an update on progress made to enhance the conduct framework for the financial services sector in Bermuda. The objective is to provide additional requirements regarding the conduct of institutions and the protections of customers. This will be achieved with amendments to the Banks and Deposit Companies Act of 1999 that provides additional powers to the Bermuda Monetary Authority to allow them to adopt and enforce clear and consistent regulatory processes. Last week's throne speech identified another initiative relating to private pension plans, or more specifically, private defined contribution plans. These are the pension plans most employees in the private sector have in Bermuda, where periodic payments are made into the plan by the employee and or their employer. In these plans, the retirement income that a plan participant receives upon retirement depends on how much is paid in and how it is invested over time, rather than a formula based on a number of years of service with your employer. Therefore, the return on the investments that are achieved by an individual participant's plan is a critical factor in the affordability of their retirement. However, the return that a participant receives is after all fees have been paid. This may include management fees and expenses charged by fund managers, but also includes fees charged by service providers such as administrators, trustees, and custodians. Often, the breakdown of these fees is not easily discernible. More importantly, many people do not understand the impact that the size of the fee makes on their future income potential. Transparency and investor education related to this area should therefore form part of a financial conduct regime. In fact, a small increase in return resulting from a small cost savings can have a meaningful impact on future retirement income, especially over longer periods of time that funds are invested. Therefore, we will undertake an assessment involving all stakeholders to ascertain whether there are opportunities to lower cost to plan participants. Thus far, I've discussed our work to strengthen frameworks relating to financial institutions, which impacts their clients. The Ministry of Finance is also committed to conduct and oversight within the government and related entities that impact the public at large. As mentioned in the throne speech, service on government boards and quangos has become more complex, as these bodies are delegated powers and independently perform functions under various statutes, but on behalf of the public. The Ministry of Finance will continue its work to strengthen financial oversight and governance arrangements. As part of this work, we will be reviewing the requirements for all boards and quangos under our purview to ensure that experience criteria are appropriate and that persons appointed are equipped to carry out their responsibilities. Where necessary, this will involve mandatory fiduciary training or professional accreditation in disciplines such as legal, financial, or accounting, and may be mandated through legislation as necessary. In addition, as part of the reviews, the Ministry of Finance will also assess governance procedures and financial controls in place to ensure that they are appropriately conform to best practices. Reviews will also be extended to other entities for which the Ministry of Finance is required to give approval of budgets and work plans. It will also include any entities where the government is deemed to have a significant financial interest or exposure. Finally, I would like to provide brief comments that address the important issues highlighted by Minister Furbert's remarks regarding Tynes Bay. As you can imagine, any proposed replacement or refurbishment of our waste-to-energy plant is a large project. It will also involve a sizable financing requirement. In addition, we recognize there is an imminent need to take action and that Tynes Bay forms part of an even larger water and wastewater master plan, which requires an even greater level of financing. Consequently, and in parallel with the work being carried out to assess options for the physical infrastructure, we are assessing potential financing structures that must form part of the overall business plan that is financially prudent. As there are real risks of potential failure at Tynes Bay, not to mention mounting maintenance and repair costs, we will work diligently to execute on the most optimal plan for the long term, which will balance securing the country's infrastructure requirements with continued financial prudence. We look forward to working together to address all of these issues, which in our view are important to the health and well-being of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. At this time, we welcome questions from the press, starting with Fiona McCruder from the Royal Gazette.
Thank you very much, Ministers. Thank you for having us this afternoon. With regards to the Tynes Bay facility, I think the most recent budget showed that about 46 million had so far been spent there. Can either of you give us a bit more information about what that was spent on? Is it the upgrades that you're talking about, or was that money allocated elsewhere?
I don't have that information in front of me right now. I could get that information back to you, though. But it includes operation expenses also.
Super, thank you. And also with regards to that project, can you talk a little perhaps about what more we might be doing to encourage recycling with regards to, just general waste that comes from household items?
Well, I mean, as you know, right now, there's some recycling going on right now, but the ministry is discussing how can we move ahead and make this even more accessible, and so people can become more cognitive and do more recycling than they're doing right now. Bermudans do not recycle as much as they should, and we should be doing it. But the ministry right now is discussing how can we get that message over there, get it out there to make it happen even more. So
how can you get that message out there then?
Well, we just can make more people cognitive of the importance of recycling. As you see right now, the Minister of Home Affairs is away discussing certain things when it comes to carbon and type of things. We want to make sure that people are cognitive of what's happening. I mean, I have a place that people ask, well, when do we recycle? We have to recycle more, and we agree with that.
Super, thank you. And just an update about something you've not mentioned with regards to is the Southampton Post Office. We know that was closed for renovation. Southampton Post Office? This is in your ministerial role for Cabinet Office, yeah?
Go ahead.
Thank you. We know that it was closed for renovations, and we've heard some people experiencing long delays at Warwick where they've been advised to go instead. Can you give us an update on the renovations at Southampton, if that's still due to open again early December, and whether or not there's going to be any boost to service levels at Warwick as we approach Christmas?
Well, the work is ongoing, and hopefully we'll get their work completed as soon as possible. But there has been some issues in regards to making sure that the staffing problem, as you know, we had this pandemic going through, and then we hopefully have the place open as soon as possible.
And will that be early December as expected?
I cannot at this time say exactly the time, and it'll be confirmed in December, but we want to get it open as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Minister of Finance, can you tell us anything more about what the proposed modernisation of the BEDC Act will entail?
Well, the BEDC does not fall under my remit. It actually falls under the Premier, and so I'm not properly briefed today to be able to kind of respond to that question. I would direct you to the Cabinet Office.
No problem. And with regards to economic empowerment zones, is that something you can speak to?
That is also part of the BEDC.
Fine, thank you. With regards to the private pension funds fees that you were speaking about, have you seen any instances or been made aware of concerns about price gouging in that area?
I have not. I have some anecdotal information with respect to fees, and which has prompted us to want to have a closer look at it. As a finance professional, I certainly appreciate, as most people would, that when you invest money and the power of compounding of interest and the ability to grow money over time, with expenses like fees charged by service providers on pensions, if those fees are out of line with the market, potentially it has a dampening impact on people's ability to grow their funds to be to maximum value for their retirements. So we're taking a look at it to see if there's opportunities for rationalization of the cost.
Sure. And can you say then maybe what you would think would be reasonable fee or a reasonable portion that would be taken?
No, we're getting to work now, and over time we will capture all the data, and then once we have the data, we can make an assessment and then have a view on what we think should happen going forward.
Understood. Thank you. This next question does relate to BEDC, but I thought perhaps as the Minister of Finance, you might be well placed to answer it. Within throne speech, there was talk about assistance for faith communities and the third sector to get mortgage and financial assistance and help with loans. I just wonder what your thoughts were on, why third sector organisations might want to take on a loan. Some of them have expressed concerns that that's not an ideal model for them to have to repay money back in years to come. As a Minister of Finance, why would you think that might be a good idea?
I don't know the particulars of each member of the third sector, but I would suspect that part of the initiative was to try to find a way to get them access to financing in as much as they needed it at more affordable pricing. BDC does provide guarantees on loans, and in as much as the guarantees are provided, it certainly helps to take the risk of the loan down, and therefore the pricing comes down. So I would suspect that in as much as, and maybe all charities may not have a need for a financing product, but some may, and in as much as there is a need for it, I think this initiative will help those charities.
Sure, thank you. We've heard some concerns that it may not be a concern that the throne speech was ambitious, but economist Craig Simmons has said that it was an ambitious throne speech, but that ambition may need to be tapered due to finances and ability to, obviously fund some of the initiatives mentioned. Do we have the money, and are we able to provide the money for policies such as the island-wide CCTV or financial commitment to athletes that were promised last week?
I think a couple of things. Before I came over here today, I happened to glance at the paper and I saw the article that you're referencing. What I would say is this: does the government have the money today, in a conventional sense, to pay for all of the things in the throne speech? The answer would be no. But that assumes that we look at conventional financing, and part of my job is to kind of help to develop strategies around financing that may be innovative and creative. And so all things may not need to be necessarily funded by the government. There could be opportunities where some of these initiatives are funded in conjunction with partners.
Okay.
Throne speeches, I think, should be ambitious, and I think the general public expects them to be so. But governments also have an obligation to kind of set priorities and to kind of consider the fiscal implications of those initiatives.
Thank you. We've heard some suggestions that the testing regime for travellers is discouraging business travellers. Is that something you've been made aware of? And if so, have you heard about or lobbied for any changes to the travel testing regime?
I have traveled a little bit myself and will be traveling again fairly soon. However, I think that we have tried to adapt the testing regime to the science and to our experience. And in as much as we think that there are opportunities for improvement, we certainly try to introduce ways of streamlining the process. I think that feedback, whether it comes into the tourism or to the Ministry of Health, we properly assessed, and we would have a look at kind of what we're doing to ensure that we're making things easy for people.
Sure. I have a couple more questions. I'm told I only have time for one more, so I'll jump to one and perhaps send a couple more later through the media team. But with the current circumstances, can you tell us, or can you make any pledge to Bermudians that there will be no new taxes in your budget next year?
Well, we've only just started I think I mentioned in my press conference 2 or 3 weeks ago that we've only recently started the budget process. What I'm not going to do is make a pledge today until I've had an opportunity to give some further thought to what the budget for next year looks like. In as much as there is an opportunity for us not to raise any new taxes, I will certainly make that statement at an appropriate time. What I would say is this, that my own view is that in an economy that is still struggling to regain its footing, the introduction of new taxes would only add additional brakes on the economy. However, in my budget last year, we didn't raise taxes, but for select few fees. We will probably have a look at implementing something similar for next year, but we have not yet decided. I'm still in the early stages of the process.
I appreciate both your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Next up is Jasmine Pettison from BBC.
Good afternoon, ministers. Thank you for your time. For Minister Furbert, as speaking on the Tynes Bay facility, you mentioned that welders from overseas would be working on the project. Were any locals considered for this project?
This is probably a highly specialized type of project. I'm not sure if you've seen the actual pictures. I don't see one back with me, but there are some pictures. I mean, these valves have to go down in these areas, and they were used to doing it. And we got to be sure that we get it right for this time. But we are going to be encouraging and working with welders to try to train them for the future.
Thank you. Minister of Finance, would you be able to answer some questions on the consumer price index that came out this week?
Well, lucky enough, Jasmine, the person responsible for the consumer price index is sitting to my left. So,
here we go. Given the uncertainty of the pandemic and the need for up-to-date information, I wanted to know why the CPI figures delayed, whereas newest figures would better reflect what's happening in the economy today.
If you ask me, should we find a way to speed it up? I would say yes. And the ministry is having discussions within to find a way to make it happen faster. And you're right. Right now, the CPI, I think you have it up to
July.
I know August has already gone before cabinet, so we hope to have that number out. Hopefully, we have it out either this week or early next week.
Are there mechanisms in place to speed up the process? Is it possible?
All things can be improved, and that's something that we need to look at all the time.
Okay. And what does the government predict for the CPI next year?
Depending on you
I can help here a little bit. Jasmine, I think you will appreciate that the global economy has been reeling from the effects of the pandemic, and I'm sure you've heard the stories of supply chain issues, which are leading to increases in prices because there is a very limited supply and much greater demand, and those dynamics. What happens is price actually increases. I think at this point it's very difficult to predict what next year's CPI was going to be because we just don't have the information yet in terms of what the experience is going to be over the course of the next several months. My hope over time is that the supply chain issues are resolved, and then we can get back to some semblance of normalcy.
So the latest figures show that inflation was measured at 0.5% for July this year. That rate is rising fast in the US and other global markets. What's the government's strategy for tackling inflation here locally?
I think we, unfortunately, because we import almost all that we consume here, we are subject to the pricing dynamics that exist in other places. So inasmuch as we are observing inflation in the United States, I would expect that we would see something similar here. The strategies available to the government are very limited. Unless we became a manufacturing or even agricultural center, because our goods and our products and services are largely imported, we will be at the whim of the dynamics that we see in other markets.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Ministers, do you have any final words?
The only thing I would say in final is that this government, myself and the Minister of Finance are working very closely to get the Tynes Bay project as far as the plan is concerned. Once we have further information, I'm sure we'll get back to the public on our next approach.
Okay, thank you all for attending and have a great day.